Hello, everyone. Good day. To everyone joining us today, we welcome you to our webinar on revitalizing traditional sports and games for today's youth. My name is Frigga Franke, and I'm a project coordinator here at Tafisa and also the moderator for today's webinar. I'm very much looking forward to this webinar myself, as I know that there will be very interesting speakers joining us today. Before we go any further, I would like to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted afterwards on our Tafisa YouTube page and the Tafisa website. All your microphones have been muted by default to ensure a smooth running of the webinar. Therefore, if you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please use the chat box and the Q&A function in Zoom. To start off, I would like everyone to share their name, organization, and country in the chat box so that we also know who is joining us today and from where. And now it's time to start the webinar. I would first like to welcome Simon Peter Tumukunde on stage, who will kick off with an impulse presentation. Simon is a visionary sports innovator, cultural advocate, and founder and president of Cheza, an organization redefining the place of traditional African games in the modern world. Since 2014, Simon has led the revival and modernization of indigenous games, unlocking their potential for education, health, social economic transformation, and athletic excellence. Simon, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Frigga, and good afternoon from Uganda, and good afternoon to or good morning, good evening to everyone from wherever you are. Yes, my name is Simon Peter Tumukunde, and I'm the founder and president of Cheza. To give a little bit of background on Cheza, the word Cheza means play, and this is in the Swahili dialect, which is one of the biggest languages in Africa, and actually the most widely spoken language. And we founded Cheza to transform traditional African sports and to elevate them to a level that can be globally accepted. So thank you so much for joining us. We thank everyone for joining us. Maybe to kick off the presentation, I would request Osaze to kindly help me and share the screen so that we can start going to the presentation. Yes. Yes, as you can see, yes, Osaze, thank you so much. So when you look at the first slide, you see three things. One, it is Cheza, and then Kwepena, and of course you see traditional African games reimagined for youth. And this is very important to the discussion today because the work that we are doing started when we were young, when we were youth. Next slide, please, Osaze. So Cheza is a youth-led organization. It was founded in 2014, but the story starts a little bit earlier. This was in 2011 when I was just 17 years old. And because of the kind of school that I was in, I used to see fellow youth, especially girls, play these traditional African games within their communities, growing up, even in school, and yet they were not even part of the usual co-curricular sporting activities that the school arranged, but the students took that initiative themselves to create activities around these sports every single day. So as a youth, this is something that connected to me. And I think it is very important to this conversation because the work that we are doing was born in youth ingenuity. So from that time when we saw the sports, we looked at Kwepena, and at first we had just the picture that was just only a game in Uganda. And we said, how can we transform this game? So I spoke to the person that I was seated with next in class. This was, I think I was in high school, senior 5. And then I told them, you know what, I'm going to do a Kwepena competition in the holidays. And then they laughed and they're like, hey, come on, how are you going to be able to do this? And then, of course, that's when we realized that, oh, okay, to actually do a competition, the games that we want to make competitive do not have competitive structure at all. There are no written rules. There is no, there's no professional equipment that can make these games competitive. There's a lot that was missing around the games. And from that time, up to 2014, we took time to research and build a comprehensive upgrade on kwepena, the traditional Ugandan sport. So we started by adding innovation to it. Maybe I know the game is popular in almost every aspect, every place across Africa, and I'll be sharing more on that. But that is how our work started. It began with one sport, which was kwepena, and which we realized was Africa's biggest traditional sport. And then from that one sport, we went into doing all the other different sports. So for us, what we want to do is to build a player base and a fan base for every traditional African sport, because for a sport to survive and evolve at a very big level, it needs this level of community around its ecosystem. And of course, we want to make kwepena the first African game to get to the Olympics, because we don't have any African game that has made it to this level in that regard. Next slide, please. So just to give you a background, the game of kwepena has more than 100 names across the continent of Africa. So locally in Uganda, we call it kwepena, but our neighbors in Kenya, they call it kati. And if you go to Ethiopia, for example, they just call it kati. If in Cameroon, it's called ndochi. And if you go to South Africa, you'll find some communities call it ushumpu, other communities call it ovi. So almost every tribe has a name for this game across Africa. And we shall be able to share documentation on that and more details. But what makes it this special sport is that even when it is played across the continent and in its variations, it has stood the test of time and it has that athletic advantage. So what it lacked, and from what you're seeing, for example, you're seeing now it is being played on a court, that there are limits to where someone should dodge from, where someone should shoot from when they're playing this game. There's a point standard, there's a Cheza standard, there is everything that makes it a game that can be fully competitive, but also a game that can be able to be applied in different contexts to community and development. Yes, next slide. Yes, yes, so maybe yes, as a screen loads. So just to take you into more of the detail, that what we focus on as we reinvent and professionalize traditional African games is that we look at the sport because Africa has more than 100 different traditional sports in different contexts. Some are competitive sports, some are sports which have a certain kind of multidiscipline approach. Some are board games, some are circle games. So what we do is that we look at every single African game, but we don't approach all of them at the same time. We look at every game and how it can evolve. Because throughout history, all sports have been evolving, and that is what has separated traditional sports, our traditional African sports, all traditional sports globally, to most global sports. Because even if you look at the histories of the different sports that we all celebrate today, they had to go through this level of evolution that made them the competitive sports or the ecosystems that have its 360 impact on communities. So our approach is rooted in that, in the potential, that untapped potential of the African sports and the native advantage that they hold. And our programming is built around, first and foremost, youth, because we studied it as youth, but then also because of the biggest population on the continent and the love for the culture that the youth on the continent have. It is very important that we build this around the youth potential of sport. So that is one of the, that is briefly what Cheza does. And to take us to the conversation of how, thank you, Saze, for sharing screen. Okay, so to take us back to our core activities and initiatives, we have what we call the kwepena Festival. Now, the kwepena Festival is a multicultural celebration of traditional African sports. We bring together youth from different communities. We unite them in contexts of their backgrounds, of their of kingdoms, the tribal lines, and we bring together the traditional African community to play these games, to celebrate them, but also the children to be able to experience them. And also we add a competitive angle to this festival. So we've done it, and when we're looking at the preparation of this presentation, we're looking at what are the challenges that are being faced by the different, in the development or the adoption of traditional African sports. And one of the things is that was in the founding of the Kwepena Festival was when we started our work, for example, we did not have funding because you would find there is no structure from government to, to make this very successful, to fund the sport, or to buy into, the potential that traditional sports hold, because the priorities were the other important sports into the communities. So for us, we created the Kwepena Festival as a way of bringing in people, generating income for the association, because it is an event that we ticket, and then people come to, they pay and play, they pay to be part of the games. And then this in turn has helped us run the organization for over 10 years without actually getting direct funding from government until the government picked up on what we're doing, and finally there's been buy-in. But our programming has been built on the structures of programs like the Kwepena Festival, the Cheza Game Day. The Cheza Game Day is a schools program that goes in more than 200 schools across the country, and we introduce students and young people to traditional African games. So all these are youth-centered programs. We have schools and community clubs. We also have a very powerful program in South Sudan called Boribori Championing Girls, which uses that, because Kwepena, like I said, it is in every African country. So in South Sudan, they call it Boroboro. So we use Boroboro in South Sudan as a way to champion girls' rights, peace building, and a lot of programming across the different regions in South Sudan. And of course, we also have coach and training, certification, and different methodologies that we build around, because when we play traditional African games, they have different intelligences that they present to a person. So of course, some are linguistic, some are spatial, bodily kinesthetic, and those, of course, there are those that are, musical, and logical, mathematical. So every other traditional sport offers a lot. And these are some of the ways that we approach the work that we do. Next slide, please. Just to jump, just to a few slides ahead, just to, in the interest of time. Next. Yes, so from this point, this is one of the powerful things that I wanted to communicate. Why traditional African games matter, and I believe I've touched a little bit of it, the native advantage, the evolutionary potential that the traditional games hold, and the identity and heritage and wisdom. I believe the panelists will go more into this, but just to go to the next slide, it's one of the key things that are very important to these conversations, because when I started this work, I even didn't know that Nelson Mandela played traditional games. Or he's someone that was, enthusiastic about this. But as I was reading his book, The Long Walk to Freedom, I was very intrigued, because he takes some time to write about the traditional games that he played in his village in Kunu, and how they impacted him as a young person. And his favorite game was called Tinti, which it exists in some variations. And the beauty about, for example, Mandela's favorite game, it is also played in Uganda, in Western Uganda communities, and they just call it a Mahedy. But it's the same game that he describes in his book. But he says that all these games that he played, they helped him to build the collective potential. If we can go to the next slide, if they helped him to build that collective potential. This is just an extract from the book, that without the traditional African games, probably Nelson Mandela couldn't have been what he could have been. But that impact and the principle that was taught through these games is what made him appreciate collective potential. And this is something he could not have learned in any Western education. And this is very important, and it shows how important these games are to the continent, and why we need to preserve them, because they just don't build athleticism, but also the potential to build the next leaders is held right within these games, even right to the political scopes and leadership spaces. Yes, next slide. Yes, just maybe to give, I touched a little bit on this, on the different histories of the other sports. When you look at sports like football, they evolved from different, traditional variations, until at some point, a path was taken to evolve the sport and make it what football is today. But you realize it had lots of variations and lots of it lacked structure, and this is a path that all sports have taken. And this is very important for the portfolio that traditional sports hold globally, because if they can be able to take on this, basketball may not have been a traditional sport, but it evolved in a certain context. You've seen the martial arts, we've seen sepak takraw, we've seen kabaddi from India, and the path that it has become a sport that not only contributes to the community in a social way, but also in an economic way. And I think this is very important as we consider what the youth can be able to do through these games and how their lives can be impacted. Next slide. I've spoken a little bit about this kabaddi. Kabaddi was, I'm sure some of us know it from South Asia. It has evolved and it has become, a big global traditional sport. We've seen round net, or what we call spike ball, which started in the US a few years back, and it has evolved and it is making this kind of movement. And this is the potential that all these other games, all our games hold, all the traditional sports hold, I believe, the evolutionary potential with the right level of innovation to them. Next slide. So just to build on how we can use these traditional African or the traditional sports, how we can be able to replicate and to develop them. There are three parts that we consider at Cheza. The first is a singular path, which is how we started, because we started with one sport. That we look at a sport and say, how can this sport be influenced? How can it evolve? How can I impact it? And there's a lot that can be built around the ecosystem of that, because you never know what the next a big sport could be, but the next big sport could be a traditional sport, or a couple or a number of traditional sports. So this singular path explores that community, that potential that the traditional sports hold, and then the community programming path, and the community programming path, and of course the multi-sport preservation path. Briefly, these are the three parts. I'll be able to share this presentation later on so that we can dig into it. But these are the three key parts to the evolution of these traditional sports and in our approach for Cheza. Yes, maybe to the next slide. And of course, we have an ambassadors program. We'll share all about that for anyone who would love to join Cheza, because we have ambassadors in more than 35 countries, and these are all youth ambassadors to the traditional sport movement. And within these countries, some will fully incorporated, and others operate as delegates, and others operate through different organizations. So if anyone would love to join, we'd really welcome you to join this ambassadors program so that we can influence traditional sports together. Yes. And of course, partnerships are key to anything. And we have managed to get both private and public partnerships within the work that we are doing. And I present that as a key to the work that we are doing, because even when we are presenting today, we are not presenting alone, but we have a lot of professional people here with a lot of wisdom to share. And these partnerships are important to the work that we are going to do ahead of us to transform and revitalize these traditional African games. So on that note, allow me to thank all of you and to thank the partners, to thank Tafisa for bringing all of us together, and everyone else who is part of this. Thank you so much, and I look forward to more of what this conversation holds. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simon, for that interesting presentation. And I would definitely be interested in trying Kwepena sometime. So I hope I will get
Definitely.
And to everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to drop a message in the Q&A box. And then in the end, we will hopefully have some time to go through your questions. Now, before we go further, we would also like to hear from your experience. And for that, we will be using the Mentimeter platform. And you will find the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code or use the QR code on the screen. You will see now. Let's see. Okay. Unfortunately, there's a small technical issue. Wait. Then please take the code in the chat and then you can already join the Mentimeter. Okay, here you can see it. Okay, while we're waiting for people to join, I had a quick look at the chat and it's very impressive to see all the different countries you're joining from. We have people from India, Namibia, really diverse, from Botswana. It's great to see so many of you joining. All right. I think we can start with the first question. We would like to know, have you ever participated in traditional sports and games in your community? Yes, and you still do? Yes, but not anymore, or maybe you've never. Okay, we're still waiting for some more answers. Okay, for some reason we can't see it on the Mentimeter, but I do see some answers in the chat. Yes, and you still do. Okay, some people not anymore. And we also have some people who have never. Ah, here we go. All right. It seems like many of you have already participated, but some of you also have never. So then it's going to be interesting because you will also get to see some examples. Okay. Great. Then let's move on to the second question. Where do you see the most value in traditional sports and games today? Is it maybe the accessibility feature or the cultural preservation, the inclusivity of traditional sports and games, or maybe also the fun factor? Ah, interesting. Okay, I see cultural preservation is on the front and inclusivity are. Okay, great. That's interesting. Cultural preservation is very important. That's where you see the most of you see the most value in cultural preservation. Okay. Thank you everyone for participating in the Menti. It's always also important for us to hear from you. And now I would like to welcome Pat Quigley from Limerick Sport Partnership, who will share a short presentation on the Tafisa European Sport for All Games that are taking place later this year. Pat? Yes.
Thank you, Frigga. Now, just confirm you can see that okay? Great. Thank you very much, Frigga. And good morning and good day, everybody, wherever you are. I'm very pleased to spend the next couple of minutes just speaking about the European Sport for All Games, which will be taking place in Limerick, in Ireland, in August of this year. My name, as Frigga mentioned, is Pat Quigley, and I am a project manager with Limerick Sports Partnership. And we are responsible for hosting this event in a partnership with our good friends in Tefisa. So this is the third iteration of the European Sport for All Games, and will follow on from really successful and colourful events in Leeuwarden in 2018 and in Perugia in 2022. And at its core, the European Sport for All Games is a festival that celebrates traditional sports and games from all across Europe. For example, in Ireland, our most recognised traditional sports are hurling and Gaelic football. And we see that these are absolutely central to our sense of identity in Ireland, and they are the centre point of many communities across our Ireland, the island of Ireland, particularly when it comes to young people. And so in a very similar way, we're looking forward to welcoming over 250 participants from all across the EU and celebrating their heritage and their culture through the medium of sport in Limerick in August of this year. And across those few days, we will have participants from over 25 countries, from Ireland to Spain, Italy, France, Serbia, Slovenia, Turkey. There really is going to be something for everybody in Limerick. And at a glance, what that few days looks like is something like this. So you'll see from this graphic that the focus is very much on demonstration, on interaction, and on participation. But all of this is working towards celebrating that rich diversity of sporting tradition that exists across all of our countries in Europe. So really, whether it's a chuckball or tamborello or ball games or barrel rolling, there will be something for everybody in Limerick this summer. Now, I'm sure many of you don't know Limerick as a city. It's located in the mid-southwest of Ireland. It has a population of approximately 100,000 people. So by any European measure, is a very small city indeed. But as a venue, what this means is that the city is very compact, it is very walkable, and it's very connected. So you're never really very far away from anywhere when you are in the heart of Limerick City. And our job as the hosts then is to maximize this sense of connection. And we hope to turn Limerick's parks and streets and public spaces into vibrant hubs of colour, of culture, and of community. And this event has been designed so that it is not about elite performance and it's not about the fanciest stadiums. This is an event that was designed for the communities and will be delivered in those communities. So the venues you see on screen there are some examples of the spaces that we're going to be occupying and using as our main venues when it comes to the games in August. Now, in Limerick Sports Partnership, we believe that sport should be for everybody, regardless of who you are or where you're from. And together with Tefisa, we also believe that because sport and culture are so intrinsically linked, sport plays a really crucial role in building stronger and more connected societies for everybody. So with that in mind, if people today would like to get involved, or for example, to volunteer, or simply to find out more about this event, you can follow the QR code on the screen here, which will take you to the games websites. And there are plenty of ways in which people can be involved and support this event, regardless of your cultural background or where you come from. And together, we'll hope to build a festival that truly celebrates traditions and promotes sport for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Frigga.
Really exciting. And yeah, feel free to scan the QR code or visit the website, and then you can find out more about the European Sport for All Games. All right. Now it's already time to move on to our panel discussion. And during the panel discussion, don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A function just below on your screen. And we are very happy that we're joined today by really great panelists who come from diverse backgrounds with different insights, experiences, and knowledge to share on our topic. And therefore, it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Joining us today is firstly Dr. Paidamoyo Mandizvidza. Dr. Paida is a Zimbabwean digitalization expert, communication strategist, and advocate for the advancement of traditional sports and games across Africa. She currently serves as the Chief Operating Officer of the African Traditional Sports and Games Confederation, where she leads continental initiatives focused on preserving, promoting, and modernizing indigenous sports as tools for cultural continuity, social cohesion, and sustainable development. She holds a PhD in marketing and business science with research centered on digital transformation and service delivery, the healthcare sector, and she has also developed innovative digitalization models aimed at improving efficiency, accessibility, and quality of service delivery. Welcome, Dr. Paida.
Thank you.
Thank you. Secondly, I would like to introduce Mariele Depeuter. Mariele was raised in Baker Lake, Nunavut, where she developed a passion for sport and using sport for social development. Mariele holds a degree in health studies and kinesiology and has served as Team Nunavut's chef de mission since 2014. Currently, she's the Director of Sport and Recreation for the government of Nunavut, and beyond her professional endeavors, she also remains deeply involved by actively volunteering for local sports organizations. We're happy to have you here on the panel. Furthermore, Raju Mahajan will... Okay, I just got the notice that we will now introduce Dr. Jack Sugden. Jack is a senior lecturer in sports sociology, governance, and law at the Liverpool John Moores University since 2021. Jack also has 13 years experience working in the development and peace field. He has managed, coordinated, and researched such projects in Israel, Palestine, South Africa, West Africa, Jordan, Northern Ireland, and Colombia. Most recently, Jack is leading a funding bid alongside the African Union due to his role as special advisor to the African Traditional Sports and Games Council. Welcome, Jack. And finally, I would like to welcome Tracy Mahedy. Tracy is the program manager with Limerick Sports Partnership, where she has dedicated the past 18 years to promoting health, well-being, and inclusion through sport and physical activity. With extensive experience in community development and program delivery, Tracy has played a key leadership role in creating opportunities for people of all ages and abilities to become more active across Limerick City and County. Throughout her career, Tracy has worked closely with schools, sports clubs, community groups, and local organizations to design and deliver initiatives that encourage lifelong participation in sport and exercise. One of Tracy's most notable achievements has been the development of the VIP program, an innovative initiative that provides young people with opportunities to gain coaching qualifications, practical experience, and valuable leadership skills. Welcome, Tracy. Okay, to start off, I would like to start with a brief icebreaker question and ask all of you panelists, what traditional sport or game did you play as a child, and does it still exist in your community today? Let's start with Mariele.
Morning, everyone. Or afternoon, where you are. So I was raised in the Arctic part of Canada, where Inuit games are traditionally played in our communities. So if you Google like 1 foot high kick or head pull, those are some of the traditional games that we played in school when I was growing up. So I'll definitely say that I do not play those activities anymore, but they are still very much alive in our communities, although they are slowly dying out, and we are trying to revitalize programs in schools and after school programs.
All right. Thank you. And Dr. Paida.
Thank you, Figa. So you actually intrigued something in me. So when I was growing up, we used to play what we call tsoro or nodo in Zimbabwe, which is a mind game that really taught us more to do with patience and social interaction. And yeah, today these games still exist. And though they're a bit fragmented in informal settings, but yeah, they still do exist.
Okay, great. And Jack.
Hi. Well, it's a strange one for me. It's because I grew up playing football, and which it is a traditional sport for me, but in many areas of the world it's non-traditional, and therein lies the problem. So yeah, I grew up playing football, but also a sport called Kirby, which is essentially where you have to launch a ball at a opposite curb from you, with someone trying to defend it. And I think that was more based on the working class communities in England in particular, and probably across the UK, which had like houses quite close to each other with opposite curbs, and they were the only place that a lot of kids could play, including myself. So yeah, and I don't play Kirby anymore. I do try and play football sometimes.
That's good. Okay. And Tracy.
Hi, thank you. Jack, we also played Kirby as well, so I have fond memories of that. In Ireland, I suppose I would have played camogie, which is the female version of hurling. So for anyone who doesn't know what hurling is, it involves a stick, a small ball called a sliotar, and a helmet. And it's probably one of the fastest field sports where the ball can travel up to 180 kilometers an hour. So it's a very high, fast-paced game. It's really enjoyable. There's 15 people on a team, and your aim is to score as many points as you can. So if you get the ball over the bar in between the posts, it's 1 point. If you get the ball in the goal, it's 3 points. So it's a really fun game, but it's definitely still very popular in Ireland. There's over 2,200 clubs, GA clubs across the 32 counties, and there's about 560 clubs throughout the world. So it's branching out and getting known across every part of the world. So it's something that is really enjoyable, but it's great to see so many people playing it.
Great. Well, thank you. Very interesting. Well, to start with, for those who may be less familiar, Jack, how would you define traditional sports and games, and where do they currently stand for today?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because how do you define something that's so diverse and so important and unique to each part of the world, from the Arctic Circle to the tip of Southern Africa, as we've already heard today? I think these are essentially informal games passed down through generation, and where culture is really performed and preserved. So I think that the definition for me has to include culture somewhere, and the informal passing down of these games through generations. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because Simon spoke earlier about sort of formalizing and certain games as well, but they are by the definition quite informal in some places. So it's difficult to pin down for me. I don't know what you guys think.
So you would say two of the key characters are that they're cultural and informal?
Yes, I'd say so.
Okay. All right. Yeah, interesting. Maybe does one of you have another understanding of traditional sports and games? Would also be interesting to hear that. Or do you have a similar understanding?
I think it's about the community and bringing the community together, that heritage that one of the really nice ones is the intergenerational opportunities. So people are learning from older people, and older people are passing on their knowledge so they can see the sport continue in their area. And I think a lot of it is about the pride that it brings the community and the people that play the activity.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I agree. Mariella, unfortunately, we cannot see you. Maybe you can.
Unfortunately, I don't think my camera is working. Sorry about that.
All right. Okay, don't worry. We hear you, so that's
Okay.
right.
Yeah,
I know that
very.
I know that you're part of the international committee for the Arctic Winter Games. Could you maybe briefly introduce the Arctic Games and what they represent?
Yes, so the Arctic Winter Games are a multi-sport major games that bring together the circumpolar world to one location. So in March, we were in Whitehorse, Yukon, for the Arctic Winter Games, and we have 2,000 participants that attend those games from all over the circumpolar world, and they are a mix of traditional sport where we see Inuit games and Dene games, but then we also have mainstream sports played there as well, such as basketball, hockey. But the highlight of those games is that we have athletes competing in traditional sports. So we have the Inuit games and we have the Dene games. And in a way, that's formalized those traditional sports because we have a technical package that has to be followed for each event. And we have rules that are being followed. So that has changed that traditional sport so they're not as informal, but it's still, it's a highlight of those games, and it makes those games very unique in that we have that traditional sport and it brings together the youth and the elders because we have a youth category and an open category for those traditional games.
Okay. So then I see you probably agree with Tracy on the intergenerational aspect of traditional sports and games.
Yeah, and I think the special part of it is that those games occur every 2 years. So it's, every 2 years we get together and you see so many familiar faces or families coming together to go to those games.
Okay, well, sounds great. And what role do the Arctic Games then play in preserving the culture? What would you say?
Well, the Arctic Winter Games are very much for our youth. They see them as their Olympics. So that's the goal in our sport development system, is to go to the Arctic Winter Games and represent your territory or your country. So they help preserve those traditional sports because it gives that incentive for the kids to get involved in those sports.
Okay. Well, thank you. Very valuable. Tracy, you had already mentioned some value of traditional sports and games, and I would like to go a bit deeper into that. Across Europe, how do you see the role and the potential of traditional sports and games also in promoting inclusion, well-being, and lifelong participation in sport?
Yeah, I think it has a huge impact on inclusion and interaction. I think sometimes it's more than the physical activity that you get from the games, but it's the other characteristics that you get, that sense of pride, the sense of community, friendship, fun, all of those elements coming together to encourage people to take part in the activity. A number of years ago, I did a program with women from disadvantaged communities across Limerick. And while we were introducing sport and physical activity to the group, the aim was to see if that would increase physical activity levels across the group. While it did increase physical activity levels, it also had a huge impact on the community pride, the connection, the sense of belonging. And one of the big parts of it was at the end of the program, the mothers participated in a competition where they represented their area and their community. But to see their children out with their flags and their signs and, really promoting their parents, motivating their mothers, it had such a positive impact in the community. And, bringing those sports brings so much more to the community. So it was really, really insightful to see how much that activity could impact the people who are playing the game.
Yeah, really great. Great to hear that you could also see that you could experience this sense of social cohesion. I think that's a really great value.
And what we also found was that a lot of those mothers became role models within their community. They wanted to take on coaching and leadership roles, and they wanted to make sport sustainable. So making those traditional games sustainable in their own communities. So that led to younger people participating in the activity.
Okay. So when I hear that you have the experience also from the others. You have the experience that the youth are actually excited about traditional sports and games.
Yeah.
But I know that Mariele, you also mentioned that traditional sports and games are slowly dying out in your community. And the topic of this webinar is also revitalizing traditional sports and games. So where do you see the challenges? What do you think is the reason for that, even though you say the youth are interested in it? Which challenges do you see there, Dr. Paida?
Thank you so much for the question. As you mentioned, we then talk more about digitalization. As we are in the 21st century, we find that most youths tech savvy, they're always on their phones, trying to find something new. So when you then come in and then try to digitalize the traditional games, we're not just digitalizing to modernize the games, but we are digitalizing to preserve the relevance of these games. So you find out, for example, platforms these days like YouTube, Facebook, or even the famous TikTok. I'm not sure if there's TikTok in some of the countries, but some of these platforms are there and very useful so that you can leverage on traditional games. For example, you can actually try to post a traditional game on Facebook, explain how best the game is played, in which countries are they played. So by doing so, you're then trying to captivate that certain youth group that is on Facebook, and then educate them and get them more interested in knowing about these games. So I'll give an example of the organization I represent, which is African Traditional Sports and Games Confederation. We are also trying to come up with a digital repository together with Dr. Jack here. So that is also another way we can try to preserve these dying traditional sports and games, not just in Zimbabwe, but across Africa. Thank you, Figa.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would be very much interested in seeing if there is a tension between preserving the authenticity of traditional sports and games and then still adapting them and digitalizing them. Like, how do you navigate that? Or is there a tension? How would you navigate that?
There is definitely a tension when you're trying to preserve and give a modern appeal of how the games come into play. I'll give an example. I'll share images in the chat. Back then, I'll give an example of Tsoro, the game that I was mentioning. Tsoro is a game where you put either 8 holes and then you put little stones inside. I'll share with an illustration. So when you then play those games, I'll give an example in the 21st century now, as of 2026, we have Ethiopia, which is part of our confederation. They managed to modernize the same game that we used to play on the floor. So now it's more of a board game that is then used to, I'll share the images so that you actually understand what I'm trying to say. So when you then come to play with modernizing this and preserving these games, this then ensures that The games are modernized, they're culturally grounded. Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing. So this is an example of the Toro game I was explaining to you. If you look on the other side, the game back then, it used to be played just on the floor or on the ground, just put little holes. Versus today, modern day, if you see that one, that is a competition that was held in Ethiopia the first week of April. So this is a similar game. How we're trying to capitalize the youth so that they're then more interested in this mind game. I don't know if what I'm saying you can relate to that. So that is another way how we can actually tap into the youth by bringing up modern ways of playing the games than just someone not be interested in playing outside, someone now conservative, they're indoors. So besides the board game that I mentioned, we're also trying to maybe as time goes on, trying to develop an application, maybe an iStore, so that people then can try to play the same game that is played, so that there's more interaction from each and every country. So thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely share with us the app when
Yes.
it's there. Happy to use that. Yeah, but Jack, I also saw you nodding when I was talking about revitalizing traditional sports and games, and now Dr. Paida already mentioned the digitalization. This question for you: do you also know of other measures that can be taken, especially when we talk about revitalizing traditional sports and games for today's youth?
Well, yeah, I've been working with Haida over the last year. She came to visit us in Liverpool, and we put our heads together to try and think of some strategies. And we found out a lot about each other, and that the food is better in Zimbabwe than it is in Liverpool. Much better, apparently. But I think digitization is one approach we might take. We're trying to build a digital library in Africa and Southern Africa specifically, which will be locally sourced, locally led, and hopefully locally owned in every sense. But I think these strategies are a product of working together across the world in different networks. Even if those networks are specific to that area, I think one of the main thrusts of this movement, I think, should be to work together to fight against the forces that look to eradicate traditional games and community games and community itself. You know, modern sport, global sport is such a machine, and it devours a lot, and it devours a lot of attention, particularly of the youth. So, new and innovative strategies like Paida discussed around digitization is, I think, really important. But also, like, emphasizing the authenticity of these games. There's a real dearth or lack of authenticity in today's world, I think, and particularly among young people who half of them don't really know what is real and what isn't. But community games, family games, events such as the events happening in Limerick soon, or the African Traditional Sports and Games game in Ethiopia coming up soon. They're like real, tangible, touchable things that people can hold on to and remember. And I think that they're really important to have those kind of islands for us to aim for, whether it be in the Arctic Circle or Africa, to help support, and the more popular they become among young people and among our networks, I think the more those games will become preserved and energized ultimately.
Yeah, I definitely see that. What you said about the authenticity, that I think the need will be increasing. Also, the more we have AI and people spending so much time on the screens, I really see what you're saying, that like there is a need for real things, for going out and meeting people. Thank you for that. Well, I would like to now shift a little bit also to have a look at the policy level. Mariele, maybe this question could be for you. What do you think needs to change at policy or institutional level to better integrate traditional sports and games into education and sports systems?
Good question. So we've been really trying to partner and work with the Department of Education within Nunavut to ensure that traditional sports are part of the curriculum. 86% of our population in Nunavut are Indigenous people. So it is a Inuit-led government. So we feel it's very important that we incorporate more traditional sport into the phys ed programs and just every day within the school system, because that is where the kids are and where we can reach them. Inuit games, traditional sport, it is a highly physical demanding sport, a lot of our traditional games. So ensuring that the kids feel comfortable and that they have those skills, so physical literacy early on, that they feel comfortable to pursue those sports as they grow into their teen years is very important for us.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to know if you were facing, or if you're facing challenges when bringing traditional sports and games into the educational system.
We are, and we have a lot of educators that come from outside of Nunavut who are not necessarily familiar with traditional sport. So ensuring that they are aware of traditional sport and trained and have the resources so that they can either bring in community members to teach or help them within the classroom setting is also something that we're trying to work towards. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting, definitely. Yeah, maybe moving over to a bit of a practical example. Tracy, I know that, or I already said that in the introduction, one of your key achievements has been the development of the VIP program, which supports young people in gaining coaching qualifications, experience, and leadership skills. Are you integrating traditional sports and games into this kind of program, or if not, do you see any opportunities for that, or do you have practical experience with that?
Yep. No, it is part of the program. So the program is a year-long program where 16-year-old students from across all the schools in Limerick come into a sports organisation, and each week they do a coaching course to learn a different sport. But the biggest element of the program is they have to give 100 hours back volunteering in their local community. So they're learning a skill, but bringing it back to their community so more people in the community can participate in sport and physical activity. And one of the big courses that we would do would be GA-led courses. So you'd have camogie, hurling, Gaelic football, rounders and handball. So we do ensure that we incorporate traditional games into the program so that more people in the community can then get an opportunity to try those games.
Great. So that's a good example of how you can incorporate traditional sports and games into these kind of programs. Yeah, maybe to wrap things up, I would like to ask one closing question. Also, because you already mentioned quite a lot of valuable insights on how we can revitalize traditional sports and games, but I would like to have one key takeaway. So maybe in one sentence, you can try to summarize how we can revitalize traditional sports and games for today's youth. And yeah, let's start with Mariele on that.
My one sentence is just going to be through education. The education system has to be on board, and I think that's where we see the kids and the opportunity.
Education system. Right. Next up, Dr. Paida.
I'll talk about documentation. We need to document these traditional sports and games in each and every country, and then harmonize them come together with standardized rules, and then definitely we'll see the games and the Olympics in the near future.
I think Simon would be happy about that. I think he mentioned that also in his presentation.
Looking forward to working with Simon. Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
Perfect. Okay, Jack.
Well, speaking from my perspective, I guess I'd say that we need global institutional support with no strings attached.
Okay. Thank you. And Tracy?
Making it visible, making sure people know about the activity, know where to go, know who to contact. And if you can't see it, you can't be it. So the more people are exposed to it, the more likely they are to continue with the activity.
All right. Well, thank you. Really good takeaways. Yeah, great. Thank you for joining us on the panel today. And now it's time to go back to the Mentimeter, where we have prepared another question for you. So you can go back to the link. We will quickly share the QR code again. See? Okay, yeah, I see the link in the chat. Okay. Okay, yeah, now it's time for you to name one traditional sport or game in your community. Our panelists already shared some, but we would be interested to hear which kind of traditional sports and games you know from your community. I see Kwepena here. That rings a bell. Irish dancing, Meso, Dulu, Valencian ball. Gobak Sodor. Balance ball from Sierra Leone. Yeah, we see a lot of different traditional sports or games popping up here. So if you're interested, of course, you can try to take a picture of this and then you can look some of these up after the webinar. Yeah, great. It's nice to see how diverse and how many different traditional sports and games we have represented here. Okay, Dr. Paida, I know that you shared with me and you already shared during the panel a slide of a traditional sport from your community. So I would like to welcome you back on stage to just give us a quick introduction, because I thought these pictures were really great. And I would like the audience to see them as well. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Figa. Maybe you can just go to slide number 2. So I'll just give a brief of, this is called Nodo in Zimbabwe, but in different countries, they have different kind of names. So what we then do as HSGC is, so far we have developed a framework that we have categorized different traditional sports and games that we identified. So from these games, we have then categorized them to mind games, water sports, and there we have around 7 categories. So Nodo is one of them, and it's commonly, and not just in Zimbabwe, but mostly in the southern part of Africa. So as you can see from the picture, this is a traditional. It shows that traditional games can just be played even at the back of your house, even anyway, you just play them. You put the stones, how it's then played, you put the stones on the ground, and then you have one particular stone that you'll be tossing up and down. So how you then win the game is the one with the most number of stones out is the one that wins. So that's how this game is played. Maybe you can go to the next slide as well. This is an example of the one that I mentioned earlier on, of the modern versus the traditional one, how we're trying to capitalize the youth to be more involved. If you see the other one, we have the youngsters getting more involved in the traditional sports because of the way that we've brought in the board games, so that we all know the modern games like the 30 seconds. So this is a different version, giving it an African feel of the traditional sports and games. So is there another slide? Okay, so these are other popular games that are across Africa, not just Southern Africa. We're talking about West, East, Central Africa as well. We've got the West Africa boxing, we've got archery in Ethiopia, and also the Mancala. So these are the different type of traditional games that are in Africa. So as HSGC, we're trying to bring out these traditional games. We've got a total of 26 member countries, and good news to everyone, even everyone listening, we're going to host our first African Games Championship in Ethiopia in December. We'll share more details with Frigga so that those that are interested also to join and be part of this initiative do come on board. I'm also looking forward to the Limerick Sportz, because it's a similar concept that we're trying to work around as HSGC. Thank you, Frigga.
Thank you very much. And thank you for those great pictures. It's really great to see. Now I would like to welcome Krish Iyengar on stage to present a case study. Krish is the head of global partnerships for the Sportz Village Foundation and has over 30 years of global experience in product management, marketing, and general management with several multinational companies and startups. Krish is passionate about sports and joined Sportz Village in 2017. As the business head of Edu Sports, the school's sports division of Sportz Village, he led a team of over 1,200 to deliver an annual program across more than 500 schools in India, working towards enabling a healthy and happier generation of children. Since 2025, Krish has been leading efforts to form global partnerships to expand the Sport for Change program. Welcome, Krish.
Thank you. Would you be running the presentation slides? Perfect.
Right.
Thank you for the opportunity, and it's a pleasure to be among fellow travelers in the Sport for Change movement. If you can move to the next slide, please. This is what I'll quickly be running through over the next 7 minutes. A quick introduction about us. We are India's largest school sports organization with a mission to get 100 million kids to play. Over the last 20 years, we've reached about 6 million. So miles to go and lots to accomplish. If we can move to the next slide, please. So India has about 200 million people who are under the age of 18. So schools are pretty much the focus for us, given the lack of safe spaces and infrastructure. This is what we've been focusing on over the last 20 years. Next slide, please. So the traditional games in India, just as a quick background, deeply rooted in our culture, with some of these games going back several thousand years ago, referenced in Vedic literature. And they're across different categories such as martial arts, gymnastics, etc. These games develop foundational skills like sensory awareness, numeracy, motor coordination, and so on. And last but not the least, it helps the ability to navigate winning, losing, and collective play. Some of the widely known games, which even Simon referred to earlier, include Kabaddi, which is also a part of the Asian Games since the year 1990. While there are a lot of other games like Kho-Kho, Lagori, Malcolm, and so on. Some of these games are regionally concentrated and closely tied to the local identity and heritage. In terms of accessibility, we definitely see a divide between urban and rural in India. 70% of the kids in India go to government schools, and this is where we see a strong alignment with the traditional games. If we can move to the next slide, please. Next again. Thanks. So our approach is underpinned by the strategic focus across these three pillars, and we'll go into details with each of these. The next slide, please. Decades ago, we developed a curriculum-based approach in terms of how we implement our program. This curriculum is backed by a fairly intensive and ongoing training program where we ensure that our trainers provide a consistent and high quality experience to the kids. So when we started, we took an important decision. It was a deliberate approach of integrating traditional sports into our curriculum. Specifically, 22% of our lesson plans and implementation is allocated to traditional sports. And this, interestingly, aligns with the national education policy as well. So why did we do this? At the core, these games develop the foundational skills that are touched upon. But more interestingly, we found that the skills from here directly map to fitness and movement demands of modern sports, football, basketball, etc. And lastly, in the underserved communities, it is culturally relevant, which leads to a strong connect and thereby higher participation. If you can move to the next slide. So specifically, we've used Kabaddi and Kho-Kho from a curriculum standpoint while also integrating some of the other sports. So they work really well when we look at an entry point for community engagement programs. Since there's familiarity and it's culturally relevant, it really helps to drive the participation backed on trust within these communities. We've also found that some of the government initiatives around pathways provides an excellent opportunities for kids from these communities. There are district, school, and state level competitions. So we work on talent identification and enable to take them for some of these competitions. As a result, the success stories create role models, and there is aspiration for children to pursue these traditional games and sports. If we can move to the next slide. This is an example of what we did in the state of Gujarat, which incidentally is the host for the Commonwealth Games in 2030. So they organize an annual competition, and we had about 1,800 children taking part in Kabaddi and Kho-Kho competitions. If you can move to the next slide. So the first part was the curriculum integration. The second that we've been looking at focusing on is building evidence. And again, this is twofold. The first part is data. Data is a key pillar of our strategy. We invested in technology to capture information pretty much on a daily basis from a program implementation standpoint. So this speaks to the first 2 points of capturing information on physical literacy and engagement. While this was a part of our core program from the outset, over time we progressed to add on the additional layer of athlete progression and pathway. Right? Now this in turn, the data that we've collected enables us to have an evidence-based conversation with donors, partners, and policy stakeholders. We can move to the next slide. So we touched upon the accessibility and the fact that it's low cost, minimal infrastructure, and it's easy to adopt. So across a lot of our government schools, sports infrastructure is definitely a challenge. And we found that this hits the sweet spot there. In terms of the local coaches, so at a group level, we employ full-time on our payroll over 1,000+ coaches, and we have data of over 170 of them who have actually specialized in some of these traditional sports. So the process of actually implementing it on ground has not really been a challenge at all for us. And when we look at tier 2 and tier 3 cities, these are the sports that are predominantly deployed there. The next part is the role of the government and policy. So there was a new national education policy that was introduced in the year 2020, where traditional sports has actually been embedded in the curriculum. And that's made a huge difference. The national sports policy actually emphasizes on the role of traditional sports. The objective or the goal is educating children on the various art forms of India and helping them to discover the rich cultural heritage of the country. The role of the national sports federations in partnerships with the Ministry of Youth and Sports Affairs also plays a role in terms of ensuring that there's a talent pipeline for potential athletes, and hence students are encouraged to take these sports up. I recall Simon actually showing a slide about the Pro Kabaddi League, and that was interesting to know that this is being taken up. These have significantly increased the visibility of the sports and growing the audience base. But having said that, there is still a challenge in terms of, the viewership still remains uneven across socioeconomic segments. Also, when we look at digital consumption, that plays a significant role in terms of influencing this. So young people today are exposed more to sports that are highly visible across media and digital platforms. And that shapes aspiration and participation. Next slide, please. So for us, we feel, and I think this is really important, that traditional sports do not need to compete with modern or Olympic disciplines. Rather, we feel that it actually complements them. The real opportunity for us is positioning traditional games as a foundation to our sporting ecosystem. So rather than emphasize on the cultural heritage part, which I think is a given, what's more important is that this should be integrated into the mainstream systems: education, policy, and pathways. If we get these three really right, I feel that we would be on a good wicket. Lastly, we feel the strong need to build evidence. As an organization, we aim to invest more into research that explores how participation in traditional sports contributes to self-identity, confidence, and social belonging amongst the young people, especially from rural and tribal communities. So gathering this evidence base, we think, will be critical in moving the conversation from just a cultural value to actually measuring impact. And this will ensure sustained investment in these games. Next, please. So that, in summary, is what we wanted to share as our experience over the last couple of decades, and specifically initiatives that we've been doing as a part of the Sport for Change movement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krish. Really interesting insights, and also impressive to see how many youth you were able to engage in the activities. I think one important point that you mentioned was that you, or in your opinion, traditional sports and games should be positioned next to Olympic sports, like along them, because it shouldn't be a challenge between both of these kind of sports. And actually, we got an interesting question in the Q&A, and maybe you want to answer the question.
Sure.
Otherwise, I would open the floor to the panelists as well. So here, the question is, traditional sports are often framed as heritage to preserve, while modern sports are seen as spaces to innovate. How do you think can we shift this narrative, which you were also already saying, and design maybe hybrid models where tradition itself becomes a source of innovation for youth engagement?
Absolutely. I go back to the points that I made earlier in the presentation, which is at a school level, if we're able to integrate this into the curriculum, I think that's the first step. So the kids are introduced to these sports. It isn't something that comes up, and there's no need to distinguish between traditional and modern sports. If our objective at the end of the day, as people in the physical literacy space, our objective is to ensure that kids are active, then this takes care of that part. I think the policy level decisions that the governments have made over the last 15 years has played a critical role in this as well. And the example that Simon provided in terms of the Pro Kabaddi League, I think that's a perfect example where, in addition to whatever we do at a grassroots level, if the sporting federations can play a key role in how they actually look at even the commercial aspect of sport or generating viewership of sports, I think that will complement the entire picture. Last but not the least, I think the role that foundations play in terms of contributions towards the Sport for Change movement, as we start providing them with evidence and data of the role that these traditional sports play, I think we will start seeing funding trickle into this side of sports as well.
Yeah, thank you. I want to go a bit into what you also mentioned during the presentation and what you also said now, that the most important thing is that kids are active. And you also mentioned using traditional sports and games to build foundational movement skills. So this refers a bit to the health aspect of using traditional sports and games. And now I want to open the floor to all of our speakers. We got the question that traditional sports and games may increase physical activity participation in communities, especially in low resource communities. So how can traditional sports and games be used as a public health tool, maybe, to address the rise of physical inactivity and non-communicable diseases?
I can give an example if you'd like. Yes. I suppose the GAA in Ireland has introduced Healthy Club Initiative. So that's a nationwide initiative that is making the GAA club the hub for health. So it not only is looking at physical activity and getting people active, but also looking at elements that can help the community. So whether it's mental well-being, nutrition, activities for older adults, places for people to socialize, and they're also introducing kind of walkways around the pitch, so people, when they're dropping their kids to training, they could get active by going for a walk and interacting with other people. So what the GAA are trying to do is, it's not just the physical activity, but it's the community and the holistic approach to ensuring that everyone has an opportunity to stay fit and healthy.
Great example. Thank you. Does anyone want to add to that, the health aspect? Okay.
I can speak to it a little bit from I guess a theoretical perspective. What they're doing in some UK institutions, and what a lot of academics in this space are starting to do, is look at games rather than sport. So as more inclusive spaces, and to get people who are, let's say, more intimidated by formal sports or the hierarchical nature of more formal sports, such as in the UK, that would be football, rugby, certain areas of athletics, can feel like they can go and participate in games in a really informal level. And I imagine this is happening elsewhere, but I can't speak to this, being from the metropolis myself in Liverpool.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jack. Yeah, well, if we move a bit away from health, we also had the Olympics as a topic before. So I'm moving more to that side again, because we got the question that many traditional sports and games have the aim to get a sport discipline at the Olympic Games. I think this was mentioned by Dr. Paida and also by Simon. So which would actually be the advantages and disadvantages for traditional sport and game to get a sport discipline at the Olympic Games?
Okay, thank you for the question. So before we even talk about participating in Olympics, we need to then identify the similar games. After identifying the similar games, we document them, harmonize the games, and then we come up with scoring games so that when we then talk about Olympics, we now have to know that if it's kabaddi, for example, give kabaddi for India, that is already an established game. So before we even talk about the advantages, we then need to harmonize the games first, create a universal name, and create universal rules. Then we now start talking about getting to the Olympics. And then maybe just to highlight a few advantages of going to the Olympics, it then gives us more global recognition and more visibility. That Tracy was actually talking about visibility earlier on. So that is one of the major advantages of going to the Olympics, but that is a long hoop that we need to cross. And also another advantage is more of the cultural preservation and promotion of the traditional games. Just also to add on the advantages, Jake mentioned about funding. So it's also more of an opportunity to get more government support and sponsorship, as well as funding and development opportunities as we target to go to the Olympics. Those are some of the advantages I can try to streamline from.
Yeah, interesting. Definitely visibility, as Tracy mentioned before, and the funding also.
Yes.
Okay, there is a question specifically for Simon. Simon, are you also here? Yes, I see you. So this person wants to ask if, according to your opinion, there's a need to establish organizations like Cheza in all countries.
Yes. That's a very good question. And thank you so much for that question, Samuel. Yes, there is a need, and this is why we started with the franchise model, and that is why we operate, how we operate. For example, Cheza is established in Uganda, but is also fully established in Kenya, in Rwanda, in South Sudan, and working with the relevant authorities within the different sporting disciplines. And we also unified the sport of Cheza because by unifying Kwepena, Butu, Maplau, and Dochi, and all the variations into one sport, we've managed to create consistency and programming. For example, we are starting our national championships. National high school championships are going to be running from Friday up to 7th of May. And these are going to bring together, different traditional sports, especially the sport of Cheza, because we have introduced it to different schools under these frameworks. So with what we've managed to do, it is possible to be replicated in the different countries and in different contexts. And also moving into infrastructure, creating the relevant infrastructure for the traditional sports spaces where people can be able to experience them, whether from a fitness and health perspective. And also these are things we intend to replicate worldwide. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now I see here that we would like to hear more about Jack's reference to traditional sports digital library in Southern Africa. Maybe you can give a little insight into that, because I know you mentioned that during the panel.
Yes, sure. Paida can really focus in on this, so can't you, Paida? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Our plan was, well, we put a big funding bid together that wasn't successful, so we're going to have another go again this summer to UK funding institutions to essentially get a team together and have several different hubs across southern and Western Africa to begin with. And Paida, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong with any of this. And then we're going to go out into the communities and try and empower local people to record, story, and upload examples of the traditional games in these communities. And we're going to do that through the use of technology, including getting drone footage of some of these games, and even like various digital cameras and stuff, and distributing that to the communities as well, so they can record their games and upload to a digital library, which would be housed in the various different hubs across Western and Southern Africa. We had quite a few different organizations, universities on the team, including the World Heritage Foundation, and someone from Tafisa as well actually was involved, Francois, I believe. Yeah, so they were really helpful. So that was the plan anyway, and that still is the plan, Paida, I believe, unless you want to add anything to that.
No, you have pretty much given the rundown of how we want the digital repository. Yeah.
All right, great. I do not see any more questions. So looking at the time management was really great, but I would still like to give you the opportunity if you think, that you're still missing an aspect on the topic of revitalizing traditional sports and games. Still like to give you the opportunity. You have one more key takeaway that hasn't been mentioned. Okay, it seems like we touched a lot of topics, and I want to thank you for joining us today. It was really great having you here on the panel, and having the insights from Simon and from Krish also. I think we can take away that it's very important to integrate traditional sports and games into the education system. We need the documentation, the data collection. There is a need for global institutional support, and also traditional sports and games should be visible, and people should know about them and know who to contact. Thanks again for all your inputs. And before closing, I still have two little announcements to make. Because tomorrow is actually the last day for registering for the Tafisa World Congress that is taking place in 2 weeks in Prague. So for those of you who are spontaneously still wanting to join, tomorrow is the last chance to register. And the next Tafisa Mission 2030 webinar will be taking place in June. We don't have a concrete date yet, so stay tuned on our channels, where we will then announce the topic and the exact date of the next webinar. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.